Hello everyone, welcome to Mastermind. So we'll continue with the series on reading comprehension, and this is the part 6 of this particular series. So we'll follow the same schedule as we were doing since the part 1. That is, we'll look at the questions first, and then we'll look at the keywords from the question, and then we will go back to the passage, read the passage, and simultaneously we can solve the question as well. Let us look at the questions first. First question. So there are 5 questions over here. Let us look at all the questions first. First question. The tribes and castes that depend exclusively on hunting, fishing, and gathering are. The tribes and castes that exclusively are dependent on hunting, fishing, and gathering are of the mainland India, the inhabitants of Andaman Islands, only the Jarawas of Greater Andaman, only the Onge of Little Andaman. So probably the answer might be, let's say, B over here, because it is very broad in nature, because the independence of inhabitants of Andaman Island. So mainland, at least we cannot mention it, because in the mainland India it is not dependent on hunting, fishing, and gathering. So we can mention it to be a Andaman Islands probably, but we have to go back to the paragraph. But by far it feels like the answer is B. The Onge of Little Andaman do not understand that language of the inhabitants of the northern Sentinel Island, though the islands are close by, indicates that they are telling that the Onge tribes of the Little Andaman, they do not understand the language of North Sentinel Island, even though they are close by. What does it indicate? That is, they are technologically poorly equipped. They are living in the mainland. They are isolated from one another, have trade relations with one another. So if they have trade relations with one another, then there is probability of they might be knowing the other language, or they might understand the other language. We cannot talk about the technology aspect over here, because they are mentioning about the land. So technology and language, they might not be related as such, as far as it looks. So this might not be the answer. So they are living in the mainland. They have not mentioned about the mainland over here, because if they are living in the mainland, then first of all these things would not come. They are already mentioning in the question itself, they are close by. So the answer looks to be they are isolated from one another, and because of that only they might not be knowing the language. So it looks like isolated from one another, but when we are reading the passage, it will be more clear for us. The passage implies that many tribes and castes on mainland of India are mainland of India. They satisfy some of their needs through trade. They depend. It is not deepen. It's depend actually. So depend exclusively on hunting, fishing, and gathering. So they depend exclusively on hunting, fishing, and gathering. They are talking about mainland over here. So they might not be dependent on hunting, fishing, and gathering, right? So next one, they have lesser needs than that of Andaman Islands. They might not be having lesser needs, correct? So correct. They might not be having lesser needs. How can you imply like that? Though we are not clear about it, we'll be clear once we are reading the statements. Live an easy life since all their needs are fulfilled without efforts. So for now, it looks like they satisfy some of their needs through trade. That is, they are not telling that 100% they are dependent on the trade. They are telling some of their needs are done through trade. Next two statements seems to be very uh, crucial actually. They are very extreme. Then they are mentioning about easy life. In the mainland, it might not imply that it is a easy life. However, will depend upon the paragraph. For now, it looks like A is the answer. Fourth one, the aboriginal inhabitants of the Andaman Islands, namely Jarawas and Onge, satisfy all of their needs with the help of local resources. They are telling all of their needs only they satisfy with the help of local resource. Why? Because they exercise considerable ingenuity. Then they are technologically poorly equipped. They do not understand the language of each other. D, all of the above. For now, it looks like they exercise considerable ingenuity. But this, let us look at the paragraph and then we will look at it, because these are very extreme. They are technologically poorly equipped. They might be, we have to read about we must read about that in the passage. They do not understand language of each other. This also might be true. So if it is all of the above or A, we have to look at it. Fifth one, North Sentinel Island is part of Andaman Islands, or what, mainland of India, Little Andaman, Great Andaman, or Andaman Islands. You have to look at these from the passage only directly. Now let's read the passage and then let's go back to the questions. Many tribes and castes on the mainland of India live by hunting, fishing, or gathering. On the mainland of India live by hunting, fishing, or gathering. See, when we read the passage, we felt that mainland might not be related to this. Okay, mainland might not be related to this. So we understand a lot in detail when we read the questions early on only, so that we understand that it is contrary by this only. So many tribes and castes on the mainland of India live by hunting, fishing, or gathering, but they do not depend upon these exclusively for satisfying their needs. That is, even though they are dependent on hunting, fishing, or gathering, it is not exclusively on which they are dependent upon. That is, they might be dependent upon something else also. The aboriginal inhabitants of Andaman Islands, however, depend upon these entirely for their livelihood. So what did we understand? That though in the mainland there are people who are dependent on hunting, fishing, or gathering, but they are not exclusively dependent on these things. Okay, they are not exclusively dependent on these things. Some of it may be because of hunting, fishing, or gathering, but there will be something else also. That is, they might be dependent on something else as well. But when you are looking at the aboriginal inhabitants of Andaman Islands, they are dependent upon this entirely, upon these only for their livelihood. Okay, next one, they have no trade relations with others. Correct, they have no trade relations with others. That means the mainland people, the mainland tribes and castes, here also they are mentioning about tribes and castes of the mainland, they might have trade relations with others, but in this case they do not have trade relations with others. Correct, they do not have trade relations with others, and are so much isolated from one another that Onge of Little Andaman do not understand the language of Jaravas of the Great Andaman, or the inhabitants of Northern Sentinel Island, all of which are close by. See, what is the keyword over here? They are isolated from one another. See, by now only we can solve some questions. First one, the tribes and the castes that depend exclusively on hunting, fishing, and gathering are. They are telling exclusively. So though mainland of India, the tribes and castes of mainlands of India have hunting, fishing, and gathering, but they are not exclusively dependent upon that. So it is wrong. But here they are mentioning about aboriginal inhabitants of Andaman Islands. They are not mentioning about exclusively about Jaravas or Onges. So here the answer for the first question would be B. Answer for the first question would be B. Next one. Once again. Next one, the Onge of Little Andaman do not understand the language of the inhabitants of North Sentinel, though they are close by. That is because of the isolation, which they have only mentioned over here. Correct? That is, here you can see they are so much isolated from one another. So here the answer is isolation. So the first answer was in the inhabitants of Andaman Islands, and the second one was the isolation from one another. Now what does the passage imply? Let us look at it later on. Let's continue the passage. Okay, so they are isolated from each other and hence they do not understand. Each of these groups satisfies all of their needs completely with the help of local resource and exercise considerable ingenuity. Okay, they have mentioned about they exercise considerable ingenuity, that is cleverness. We have read in the previous passages also. Ingenuity means cleverness in maintaining themselves on these islands, although technologically they are very poorly equipped. So they are poorly equipped in case of technology. even after that they satisfy all of their needs because of considerable ingenuity. Now let us look at the next question. First one, this one we have understood, that is isolation. The passage implies that many tribes and castes on the mainland of India, they depend exclusively on hunting, fishing and gathering. This is wrong. Have lesser needs. This is wrong. Easy life. This is wrong. Here the answer for the third one is A. This at least we have understood, because they have mentioned about the trade also, and they are mentioning it as open statement, and it is a wider statement. They satisfied some of their needs through trade. Next one. The aboriginal inhabitants of Andaman Islands, namely Jarawas and Onge, satisfy all of their needs with the help of local resource. That is because of they exercise considerable ingenuity, because right after that statement they have given it as considerable ingenuity, and then they are mentioning that as challenge for them, that is to maintain themselves on these islands, although technologically they are poorly equipped, but they are able to utilize because of the considerable ingenuity. So here the answer is A. For the fourth one, the answer is A, that is they exercise considerable ingenuity. Okay, but here the answer cannot be D, because they have mentioned about they do not understand the language of each other. They do not understand the language of each other, but they themselves are sustainable among themselves, because they know about the resource in a really good manner. That is why they are mentioning about resource over here. If they had not mentioned about resource, then we could have given even technologically poor, okay, or the question related to language, etc. But here, because they are mentioning about local resource, the answer will be they exercise considerable ingenuity. So the answer here is A. Let us look at the last one. The North Sentinel Island is part of. Here the answer is D. The answer is D, which is Andaman Islands. See, it is fact also, which is Andaman Islands. And the answer here is D, because it is very broad. They are mentioning it as Andaman Islands. So Andaman and Nicobar. So they are part of Andaman Islands. Here it is mostly restricted. See here, Onge belongs to Little Andaman, which they have mentioned. Onge of the Little Andaman. Then they have mentioned about Jarawas as Great Andaman. Jarawas as Great Andaman. They are not mentioning about mainland of India over here. Mainland of India is not part of this Andaman and Nicobar, right? So mainland of India is a peninsula. So this Andaman and Nicobar comes as an island part over here. So here the answer is D, Andaman Islands. Here the answer is D, Andaman Islands. So you can opt it as odd man also, and also odd one out also. And other thing is, it is a broader option for us. So I hope you have understood about this. So most importantly, what happens is, when we are doing the comprehensions, right, when we are practicing comprehensions, that article itself is written by someone, so most of it will be very much informative for our GS as well. Correct. So here, for example, we can look at Onge tribe of Little Andaman, and then Jarawas of Great Andaman. So this also helps us, and they are mentioning about the dependency of these tribes on the local resource as well. So these also can be helpful for us in case of examination. So I hope you have understood about this particular reading comprehension. So in the next part we'll do another comprehension. So totally there are 10 reading comprehensions in this. Thank you.